Okay. Oh, so
Hi.
I put okay.
Yes,
I clicked okay.
Hi, Toru.
Hi, nice to see you.
Maybe at the beginning, you can just shortly introduce yourself, right?
Well, I'm already 71, so my self-introduction would be very lengthy. No, I'm kidding. Well, I'm a composer. I started composing music when I was a kid. The main media was a piano. When I was a kid, there weren't computers around. TVs and normal classical phone are the most advanced technologies at that time. So anyway, in Japan, generally speaking, the influence of the Western music is very large, big. And so, for example, my mother was an amateur pianist. She played Mozart, Chopin, Beethoven, and so forth. So I grew up under that kind of circumstances, and I studied engineering for my bachelor's degree, and then I went on to the States to study both music composition and also computer music formally. And later, I became a professor of computer music at the Keio University in Japan. And now I'm happily retired. Is that okay?
It's okay. And what is good musical composition for you?
Good. Well, well, something that moves me is good. I mean, it's very simple. However complicated or simple doesn't matter. It's just it has to touch your heart and shakes your body like that, which is very good. Yeah, any kind, not necessarily contemporary or avant-garde, classical or traditional or whatever. Good music is good.
Yes. Can you give some example of some last pieces which touch you and shake your heart, right?
Well, there are too many. Like I still like to play, for example, music of Chopin. Although my music is nothing like that. Or like, for example, well, let's see. I like Ligeti. Ligeti's music. Most of his music is very, very good. Very interesting also. And say, do you know Takemitsu, Japanese composer? No? Okay, that's fine. Well, there are so many. Well, Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, which is great. And so just, there are too many to mention.
Yes, yes. And what is, let's say, what is your musical ideas which you more frequently work on, or signature which you would like to develop?
Well, that's a kind of a difficult question. I have always been interested in something beautiful, something unusual, something magnificent, maybe something wonderful, which makes me want to create something like that myself. That's the initial motivation. And my idea, the basic idea is that I want to create something which never experienced before, so which brings you a surprise or perhaps some sort of discovery even. And in order to do that, there are many methods, I suppose, but currently I am probably most interested in digital signal processing using computers, which is a very good, powerful tool to generate sound itself within computer. And another big issue to me is a interest in something very universal, like how do you call it, interjections or like gestures you make. It doesn't matter what is your skin color is. Like when you are surprised, you go like, wow. When you are sad, you may cry.
Yes.
Or when you're happy, you may laugh. And then there are sonic aspect to that. For example, if you are surprised, like I said, you go, wow. Then what I do is, well, not necessarily only those sounds, but I record those sounds that happens in usual daily life. And if necessary, I go to just anechoic chamber and then record the pure, say, like sound making someone very angry or something. And then he goes, and then I just take that voice. So they are my basic motives, which anybody can relate to. And then my interest is to use them to draw an entire picture, so to speak. I'm interested in transforming very simple, very obvious, or like any kind of noise into something exquisite, something very, I don't know how to say it, something interesting, which cracks your ordinary daily life to a something more, I hope, sublime, something more elevated experience. That's it, probably. Yeah.
Can you give some example of your last pieces where you use this approach?
Oh, right now I'm not prepared for that. Well, I can send you my CD, for example, if you give me your address later.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Of course. And do you consider have you composed as well as not only like sounds, but as well as adding some visual elements or
yeah. That's another very important issue. Yeah, yes, for example, I did an opera, multimedia opera, which is not just limited to sound. And the idea of, say, music or paintings or sculpture or architecture is a very modern idea. I mean, that if you take a look at the history of art, you go back to Stone Ages, tens of thousands of years ago, and then you find this, how do you call it, cave, which is made of like a calcium. I don't know the name of I forgot the name of it. And then you find paintings on the walls, and you find very strange looking sculpture, like natural, rocks or walls and so forth, onto which you can project your own image. And I'm sure, and then also interesting thing is that those researchers are finding instruments made of animal bones, like a flute and so forth. You know that. So I imagine that the most innate or most original artistic experience wasn't dissected into paintings, dance, music, and so forth. It was originally all together, but then it became separated existence, right? And then what, in my opinion, what is needed the most is to reconvolute all those elemental stuff into a whole thing, which is now happening, I think, which is capable, which is possible by computers, for example. I mean, usually the piano cannot paint, the canvas doesn't make sound except some noise, perhaps. But computer becomes an entirely new media to create new experience, which may not be anymore called music or visual images, but everything is combined, convoluted, and then which makes creates new experience. That is what's happening now, I think.
Yes, and how it's from composer, right, perspective, how it's changed, right? How it's changing when you compose only for sound only, or you compose for this multimedia pieces, right? When there is a visuals, videos, and so on. How it's changed the process.
The change is so great. Well, for example, if you think of any form of music using sound, if you go to a more classical medium, like using orchestra or like a string quartet or whatever, usually the pitches you can use are very limited. It's discrete pitches, like C, C sharp, D, D sharp, and so forth. But in the digital domain, the frequency is continuum. So you can do much more things than using just a piano or violins. There's no question about that.
Yes.
So that's a big change, I think.
Yes, and in your pieces, do you somehow use and quote, let's say, traditional Japanese music, or?
Oh yeah, yes, I combine them because for some reason they go together very well. Like computer-generated sound has its own frequency up limit, something I forget, 22K or something, but it is actually scientifically measured. According to those papers, if you use Japanese traditional instruments, they go way high, like ultrasonic, very, very high frequencies. Or that is something I can't hear, ironically, because I have this ear ringing and the hearing loss and all those kind of things with my age. But so they complement each other very well. It's a kind of surprising thing I discovered.
Yes.
Maybe not just I. Many people feel that way, I suppose. And also, I find the traditional Japanese musical literature very rich in ideas. For example, we have no theater. No is like, have you seen one? Like a very quietly moving theatrical arts. But the plot of them are quite intriguing, like this very resentful woman becoming a huge white snake and coiling around the monk and burns him down or something like that. It's really fantastic stories. And they are very visually intriguing. And then I get quite often compositional storytelling or ideas from those very centuries old Japanese traditional theatrical arts. Yes, very interesting.
Yes. So it's like you are mixing computer music with Japanese instruments and Japanese traditional music, right?
Yeah.
So
that's I was. Well, traditionally, I was writing a string quartet or Western MIDI, but then after using computer as an instrument, yes, I became involved in combining Japanese tradition with the cutting edge technology. Yeah,
yes,
that's kind of, to me, it was a very interesting development.
Yes, yes. And what triggers you? How you end up doing that?
What do you mean by end up
So
with?
how you start why you start doing it?
Oh, why? When? What? Which one?
How you start doing
How?
Japanese?
Oh, let me see. That was, I started that a long time ago. I forget. Let me see. The initial reason is that, well, I was always somewhat surrounded by those Japanese, well, I live in now in Japan, so Japanese traditional festivals where lots of those instruments are used, for example. And it was always, my interest was there, but I never thought I could use them. But somehow I got involved with the now deceased No Master. He is very well known in Japan, probably worldwide. And also like performers, like Japanese, how do you call it, ryuteki? It's a piccolo-like instrument, or like shakuhachi, which is like a bamboo flute, or koto and other, and then sho is like a miniature pipe organ. Very nice, it makes very nice sound. And she came in to my university as a graduate student. She was already a accomplished performer. So, oh, this is great. This is, I shouldn't miss this chance. So I asked her to participate in my composition process, and she agreed. So we collaborated on some music using show instruments, which is like a wind instruments, only by either you inhale or exhale. Either way, it can make sound. It's a very, maybe I can show you later the picture of it. It's very interesting. So that's how I think it was kind of like a natural evolution
Yes.
of my musical career.
Yes.
At that point, I was about, I don't know, late 30s or early 40s. Yeah.
And if you would be a female, would your music be different?
If I were a female, well, that's hard to imagine. Well, I don't know. I cannot answer to that. Well, it depends. Well, what I am now depended on many subtle or obvious things. So obviously, if I was a female, it was, yeah, my music would have been different. Yeah, I would imagine.
And what is your way of composing? How you start and what kind of stages you go through?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, usually some sort of idea comes into my brain somehow. I don't know. It's like when you are driving a car, oh, or like when I was taking a shower, oh, another one. So I'm just guessing. If you empty your mind, idea comes in. That's how it works, I think. That's the first conception of image or a piece of images.
Yes.
And then gradually, I usually don't pay attention to them, but they just grow in me somewhere, by itself. I don't do much. I don't pay attention to them. But maybe sometimes it's 3 days after, sometimes it's, say, 6 months later. Those ideas becomes certain image. And then at that time, most of the structure is already completed. And then what I do is just I sort of like take notes from my idea
Yes.
down to to make a piece. That's how it is with me.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it.
Okay. I don't know if it makes sense or not.
And what softwares, I don't know, or hardwares you most frequently using in your
hardware and software? Well, hardware is I use only Macs. I never used Windows machines. I don't know why. And software, oh, there are many now available. Well, those softwares, for example, that reminds me of one of my friends. His name is, I will remember during the course of the conversation. He wrote software called Pure Data, which is now everybody pretty much is using Pure Data, and also what is the other one? The commercial version of that is I have pretty bad memory, but when I was a student, I also went to MIT. At MIT, those are the research subjects, like how to make the composing software itself, and then the software like C Sound, and also at Stanford, Common Lisp music, and stuff like that came out. So that was a very beginning of this computer music movement, I think. But now my students are using many different softwares that I don't know.
Okay, got
it. The progress is so fast, and you can, after you learn, say, C language, oh, this is great. And then next is Java, oh, this is great, and so forth, so forth. It never stops.
Yes.
And you give up. Yes, I used to, right. But these days, I don't think younger composers has to write his own program. I mean, that they do program one way or another, but it's not like text typing thing, like C code or something like that. So there is a big difference, I think. So it's more composer friendly these days.
Yes, yeah, got it. And how your music changed during last 10 years?
Oh, not much changed. I think basically, as I said, I'm interested in transforming very trivial sound idea into something wonderful. That's one thing. And in able to do that, I used the best computer technology available. That's what I'm doing. But you see, I'm more or less semi-retired. So you are interviewing to a wrong person.
Why? No. No. I completely disagree on that.
Okay.
And what is the biggest composer fear, right? What you fear the most as composer?
Oh, nothing. I don't have any fear at all. I mean that always music was in kind of like a crisis, right? Right now, I think so-called contemporary serious music has been dead for quite a while, in my opinion. And it's all right, something new will happen. So I'm not worried about that at all.
You said contemporary new music is dead for a while, right?
Yeah.
Why? Can you explain why it's dead? Why you think it's dead?
Oh, that's a kind of a big topic, I think. Well, like I said, originally music or whatever, the arts was just inclusive one thing. And then the modern age comes. Decolonization and so forth. And then they dissected this wholeness into parts. And then, like in science, it's very obvious. Like it was natural science once, but it became chemistry, physics, mathematical science, and so forth, so forth. And then today, dissection is really great. If you are digging maybe deep, but a tiny hole.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing happened to arts and music. And if you sectionalize things and purify anything, and then you come up to the dead end.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of natural process, I think, because all the ideas, most of the important discoveries are already done.
Yes.
And you are digging very trivial corner of a thing, which cannot be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I mean, it's a analogical way of talking about
Got it.
things, but that's what's happened to music, I think. And so right now, why there is so-called multimedia or augmented reality or whatever you call is happening is that people realize that, and they want to reconvolve everything and to create something new. Did it answer to your question?
Yes. I have one more question regarding this. Right, you said that the idea is that the sections, right? When you split in the sections,
Yeah.
deep.
That's a modern idea.
Yes, less. It is becoming less and less interesting, and you cannot discover. Right, it's becoming like, because, for example, in Europe, I spoke with some composers who are saying that this idea of let's say become music for musicians, right? That contemporary music for one, let's say, after Second World War, it started trending to it becoming more sophisticated, but meanwhile it becoming interesting only for musicians, right? So that there was decrease of interest or appeal from general public.
Yeah, that's true.
Is
Yeah.
this what you mean? This is a days that just music become less interesting for general public?
Yeah. Well, that's been that way since the beginning of, I believe, 20th century. For example, Schoenberg rejected audience. Can you imagine? Because I guess general audience is too dumb, too stupid. I think that's pretty much his idea, which is wrong. You cannot ignore audience. So look at how successful it is. I mean, that the Japanese anime, for example, they're enjoying their success, and that's because they didn't reject audiences.
Yes.
So of course there is a difference between pop culture and more serious culture, yes. But in my opinion, this serious culture became too serious, too distilled, too purified.
Yes.
So it needs to open the door to general public and then present something which attracts their attention. We should beat animes.
Yes. Got it. And
so we need somebody, some rock star like composer, I suppose, which generates more passion and interest in contemporary serious music. But I don't know anybody who is that character at all.
Got it. And you said, right, that there is a death of contemporary serious music, and what could be rebirth, right? How how to give life again to this music,
To what music?
to see a
Contemporary
contemporary
music? Oh,
Yes.
yeah. Well, I think there are a lot of things we can explore. I mean that's the classical or romantic or whatever music composers did at their time,
Yes.
and we have our own themes and interests. For example, if I were, say, 30 years younger, I would have done it myself. Well, like the continuous transformation of sound is very interesting. See, you may say, cough, and then take that sound, gradually transforms into something different. Itself is a very intriguing and interesting process. And then probably anybody would be interested if presentation is right. I mean that the serious composers looks too serious, like austere, like that. But I don't think it's a good idea. They should all smile, you know.
Got it.
Well, well, so you see, how do I put it together? With this advancement of digital technology, you can almost do anything imaginable. And if you think, if you have an idea, you can do it. You just learn how to make it, which is not that painful process at all, like learning a C language. Yeah, so I think, you know, of course, you're using sound and also some kind of image or body movement of a person. For example, using a meditating monk and take some biological signals from him, and then you cook it to something more interesting or something which reveals what's happening inside of him. Would be very interesting. For example, it just came up to my mind. So there are many things you can do. So, and in that sense, music never dies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, got it. And now I will ask a question from my friend Francois Charant. I ask this question to every composer.
Yeah.
And his question is, why do you still compose?
Well, like I said, I'm retired. You see, the problem is that I can't trust my ear. I have the best doctor in Japan cannot fix it. I have this constant earrings, and also I have a hearing loss, especially in the high frequency range. So that makes me difficult to compose. You see, I use the sound material itself. It's not like writing notes on your music stuff. So I have to listen to the sound carefully, and then I get ideas how to transform it. But if you can't hear, say, 1/3 of it, no, you can't compose anymore.
Yes, good.
Fortunately. So that's why I play tennis every day.
Yes, good. So you're becoming tennis player.
Yeah, I will go to Wimbledon.
Yeah, good. Good, Toru. And looking right, not maybe on your career, but let's say on what's going on in Japan, right? How, let's say, new music or contemporary serious music scene change during this century in Japan?
I'm not sure if I get it right. You're asking me how to use contemporary music in Japan?
No, how contemporary music change during this century in Japan?
how contemporary music, what? I couldn't hear that. Changed.
Yes.
Oh, in Japan.
Yes, in Japan.
Oh, well, as far as I know, I have to go back way back to 19th century. Well, anyway, when Japan began to modernize by importing or adapting Western technologies, you see, when the so-called black ship came, they had a steam engine on it. And at that time, I think it was late 19th century, I believe, Japanese didn't know what steam engine was. So that shocked people. So that shake everybody. And then everybody woke up. Oh, we have to change ourselves. That's how Japanese modernization basically started more than 100. It's been like 150 years ago. And then, well, it wasn't limited to the field of technology. The Japanese government also tried to import Western music. And then they built a university which just does that, researching, and also they invited composers like Richard Strauss and so forth at the time. So that's how Japanese Western music started. Oh, and of course, we had our traditional Japanese music, but at that time, that was regarded something trivial. Well, if you compare to a shakuhachi player with a huge orchestra sound of Mahler or say Strauss, yes, well, it's kind of obvious. But then, well, we have, I will skip that, but we have a history of the development of that Western style music until the beginning of 20th century, where then a new generation of composers appeared. Most of them are, interestingly enough, born in 1930, around 30, and they started the avant-garde music, and they knew that people like Stockhausen, Boulez, or those big names, and then they tried to introduce those music in Japan, and they themselves are composers, so they composed their own music under the influence of those, well, serialism perhaps, and many other contemporary techniques. And then when I was a student at my university, computer music started. That was in 1950s, I think. Was it? I think it is, but then it wasn't known so much. And then at that time, what they did was just to generate sine wave sound using computer. That was a huge success. But when I was in college, somebody from the United States came to Japan, and then I think he was from Stanford, actually. I forget his name. I'm sorry. Yeah, but he was sort of advertising like what they are doing, and then he was getting attention from composers who were interested in contemporary new sound. I was among one of those. So I was the very first generation which was interested in both computer music and at that time's avant-garde music. And there are people like that, not only just me, but there are a couple of dozens of younger generations then. So, well, music obviously started to change. Did it answer to your question? I'm not sure.
Yes, and how it changes this century? How it changed this century? During
this century? 21st century.
Yes.
Oh, unfortunately, the biggest change is there is no change. I mean that within the 20th century, there are many styles always evolving, changing, and so forth. But recently, I don't see any big issues coming out. It's been dead. You
Yes.
see.
Yes.
So that's why it's a kind of like a paradigm shift from a so-called music composition. Music is becoming from so-called music to something else.
Yes.
It is itself is changing. It's like you said, it is becoming multimedia, augmented reality, computer-generated sound, and digital signal processing, all those things combined. And it is still, I don't think any clear-cut result has been published or anything, but still lots of experiments are going on, I believe. And well, we will see what the result within this 10 years, I hope.
Yes. Yes.
Right now, not much is coming out.
Yes. 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 And are many in Japan? Are there many new contemporary music composers who are doing multimedia music? Are this a trend in
Well,
Japan?
yeah, my friends, yeah, there are, as far as I know, like 10, 20, 30. I don't know. Yeah, and including my students, there are, like, I don't know, a couple of hundreds probably. But the problem is that, as you may know, they can't make a living by just composing. So they have to find an academic. Usually they find a job at the university teaching.
Yes.
And nowadays, those university positions are getting also scarce. So it's very difficult for them to sustain their life.
Yes.
So
Good.
some of them quit.
Yes.
It's a waste of talent, I think, but that can happen. And I have seen some very talented guys give up on musical career. That has happened, and he's now doing consulting.
Got it. Got it.
So to some trading company or something like that. Well, it's not laughable. That's the reality.
So it's very hard, right? As I understand, because there are like the time when these positions were created, right? It was previous generations, and nowadays younger generations have hard times to be employed, right?
Well, maybe for previous generation, it must have been hard because the most composers I know are, except perhaps one only exception is John Cage. He wasn't teaching, and Toru Takemitsu, that's another exception. But all other composers are also professors. Like Ligeti is, for example, was teaching somewhere in Germany, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And what about, because for example, when I spoke with South American composers, they're saying that there was a process of, let's say, decolonization, right? Ideas that Western music is not ultimate music, that they are going back to the roots. There is some tendency back to. Is this something in Japan as well?
Degenerate. Well, that's a pity. For people who can't find new path, that's the only choice, I suppose, anywhere. And I would, if it was me, I would rather quit than degenerate. That's no good.
Yes, got it. And how new music audience, right? How it changed during this century?
Oh, I don't have a large audience to start with anyway. And my music has been played mostly actually in Europe and the States, and like at the Boston Museum, for example, museums in Denmark, and Sweden, and in Greece. That was at the university. And they are usually combined with academic convention, like a Computer Music Association presentation, paper presentations, and then adjunction to that, they have concerts like ICMC, for example. Do you know ICMC? International Computer Music Conference is one of those. And I don't go to those conventions anymore a lot, so I don't remember names, but I used to go a lot, yeah, and to
Yes.
play my music. Yeah.
Yes. And you said that you are mostly played, right, or performed in Europe or United States. Why you are not so many played in Japan? What's the reason?
Well, I did, but the reception wasn't very good. They don't like my music.
Do you have idea why?
Well, well, it's strange because quite often when I do a concert, give a concert, they make like a newspaper article, or like I got interviewed by TV even. But that doesn't mean they like my music. They may be interested because it's something very different from other people's music. But I never get popularity, the kind of popularity that you can enjoy.
Yes.
I may have some fans, yeah, but very tiny group. So it's dead there too.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. And just looking on Japan new serious music or contemporary music, what is trend? Where it's going, right? To your mind.
Well, that depends on the guy who actually composes music. So well, the people I'm interested in are doing digital stuff, yeah, like, and then usually they go to visual domain with sound.
Yeah.
For example, most of my students originally were composers, and some lucky guys were now professors teaching computer music, but they also now do visual stuff. And then for some visual programming, there are many kinds, I don't know, but many interesting things going on. Those visual domain became the main thing, activity for them. And of course, sounds are involved, but I don't think they are doing very sophisticated sound, but they are concentrating on creating some visual effects and so forth.
Got it.
So visuals are winning over sounds.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. And
how about you?
My last.
How about? Yeah. Okay.
My last question to you is: what is the role of new music in society, in Japanese society, right?
Oh, so I'm just hoping that how music would or should be in the future. Music can be very exciting, intellectual, very deep, but at the same time entertaining. And then entertaining aspect is kind of lacking, I think. Music, serious music have become too serious. So there is no reason the entertainment side and also the serious side can not can go together. And then that's a general environment. And also, there has to be a new discovery made in the field of this audio perception. And there are many, I think, powerful ways to do that, but people don't know. For example, you can create mathematical model of oral perception, which can be controlled by many parameters. And but if you set those parameters to certain extreme, you can experience the kind of sound is very crazy and then never heard of, but somewhat familiar to. And it's to me, it's like our brain itself. Brain is usually locked so that it doesn't go wrong, doesn't go crazy. But under certain circumstances, like in a dream or a certain, I don't know, the seizure or something, I suppose, if you experience that, then you can really sort of, you can see a little bit of inside of the brain, what's really going on there. And it's not something, it's very far from ordinary experience. So there may be some kind of danger. It's like a drug, I suppose. But you can probably create the kind of wonderland using those mathematical models to bring a new oral experience. That's, I think, quite possible. And I believe that's part of the research going on at Stanford University, where Atao Tanaka studied, and it's called physical modeling. You can usually you create a already existing instrument, physically in computer, but then if you turn certain parameters to the extreme, it will start making unusual sound, which you never heard of.
Right.
So, for example, that's one maybe extreme, but one way to go. But in any case, there has to be a major breakthrough in the field of music. So we just have to wait the appearance of a new genius.
Good.
He will come, or she, whatever, sometime.
Got it.
I believe so. You need a star. If you don't have Federer or Djokovic, you won't watch tennis, right? Same thing.
True indeed. Thank you very much, Toru, for this interview.
No problem. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure for me as well.
I hope I will have some time to see you in person.
Yes. I would like to come to one day to Japan.
Come over to Japan.
Yes.
Okay.